I've talked about clarity in the disciple-making journey, and I've talked about the goal of the disciple-making journey. Let's talk about the cost of the disciple-making journey. But let me step back and just say a few words about the ordinariness of the journey. One of the reasons so many Christians are not engaged in disciple-making discipleship is they've misunderstood what it means. To be a disciple-making disciple means to live a very ordinary life. It means to incorporate into the daily reality of your life, helping others who want to know, helping other people who want to know how to become a disciple of Jesus. It's about living in a very ordinary way, no matter what your career, no matter what the circumstances of your life. It's about living, not learning. It's not that we get more and more head knowledge. It's that we begin to live the knowledge that we have. And it's rooted in relationship. You cannot have a disciple-making life without a deep relationship with Jesus. And you don't begin to have a deep relationship with Jesus without learning how to have a deep relationship with Jesus. It's about obedience. Again, it's about, I've learned a little and now I'm trying to obey a little. It's not, I have to learn more in order to obey. So I might only know one thing, that Jesus does not want me to lie. And it means I am now struggling to not lie, to not prevaricate, to not dissemble. I only know one thing. I have to somehow live the truth if I'm following the one who said he is the truth. And so I must not lie. So you see, I don't need to have a theological degree. I don't need to know Genesis to Revelation. I don't need to be able to do anything other than resolve that as Jesus teaches me something, I want to learn to live it. Disciple-making discipleship is a process. It's not something that happens like that. It's a process. It begins when I want to learn it, and it begins to grow as I begin to do what is necessary to learn it. It begins to grow as I am in a relationship with someone who understands it better than I do, and who can hold me accountable to what I've said I want to do. It's a very ordinary thing, but it requires intentionality. A friend of mine who's a Southerner has a way of saying it this way, that when Jesus says go and make disciples, he really means, since you're going to be going there anyway, while you're going, make some disciples. So if you're a biker, you make disciples biking. If you're a runner, you get to know people that are interested who run. It's ordinary. It's in your normal life. It's not religious behavior and it's not bizarre behavior, but the cost is high. To obey the final command of Jesus, to be one of those who goes and makes disciples, means that you have to face the cost of being a disciple of Jesus. Many people don't realize, but only 6 times in the New Testament is it recorded that Jesus tells us what it looks like if someone is his disciple. You know, someone can think you're a disciple of Jesus and you're not. You can go to church and not be a disciple of Jesus. You can talk Christian talk and not be a disciple of Jesus. 6 times Jesus tells us, this is what will be true if you're my disciple. And the first 3 times are in the 14th chapter of Luke's Gospel, verses 26, 27, and 33. This is what Jesus says. Buckle up, it's very tough. If you do not hate your father and your mother, if you do not hate your brother and your sister and your wife, you cannot be my disciple. If that doesn't shock you, I don't know if you're alive. It's a very strong, very seemingly to especially a Western mind, harsh word. What is Jesus really saying? In the Hebraic culture in which he spoke those words the first time, what he's saying is, you have to put God first. You have to put God first. Now, if you put God first, you have to honor your father and your mother. If you put God first, you have to love your spouse. If you put God first, you have to love your brother and sister. So he's not saying you have to become ugly and hateful toward them. He's trying to clarify that he must be first. Second thing Jesus says is, if you won't take up your cross daily and follow him, you cannot be his disciple. What does he mean? When I was a boy, the only time I ever heard anyone ever quote that, it was usually a wife rolling her eyes as her husband did something, or a husband rolling his eyes as his wife did something, and saying, well, we all have our cross to bear. That's not what Jesus meant at all. He meant you must want God's will for your day. It must be your willingness to sacrifice yourself for God's will for you that day. And if you won't do that, you cannot be my disciple, Jesus says. There's a high cost to being his disciple. And there's only one measure at the end of the day. There's only one metric or measure that shows that you're on this journey. Are you obeying the final command? Are you engaged in a life that is either bringing you to being a disciple-making disciple, or you're learning to be a disciple-making disciple? To do that, you have to resolve to give Jesus time every day. You have to learn at least 12 scriptures to get started. And you have to meet with someone weekly who understands how to be a disciple-making disciple.